Welcome back. This is still Breakfast Central. We hope you're enjoying the breakfast that we're serving to you this morning. We've just had a conversation on the Anambra State Judicial Panel of Inquiry into offenses by the police, and a lot of interesting things coming out of that. But now our next conversation takes us to the West, that is the United States, and of course the continent. Now, a new era is set to be on the way for Africa, with U.S. President Joe Biden promising to make right the wrongs done by predecessor Donald Trump. Now, Biden, while delivering a message to African leaders meeting at the African Union Summit for 2021, said the United States stands ready now to partner in solidarity, support, and mutual respect in advancing trade and investment opportunities, climate change, health, and the advancement of peace and security in Africa.
Now, in setting a tone for his administration, the U.S. president has ended the deadlock over the next head of the World Trade Organization by expressing strong support for Nigeria's former finance minister. Now, one of his first moves as president was a reversal of the Trump travel ban, which affected Nigeria, Sudan, Tanzania, Eritrea, Libya, and Somalia.
So what can Africa expect from the Biden administration? Will some countries have better relationships with the U.S. than others? What agenda or agendas will be pushed? Now, joining us to try and answer some of these questions is Collins Nweke. He's a Nigerian-born Belgian politician of the Green Party. He's also currently serving a third term as a councillor for the social affairs in the West Flanders province. Collins, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Very nice to be with you again, Tula, and thank you for having me.
All right. Let's look at Biden's message at the AU summit. He outlined what he called a shared vision for a better future with growing trade and investment that advances peace and security. And I'll quote him now. He said, "A future committed to investing in our democratic institutions and promoting the human rights of all people, women and girls, LGBTQ individuals, people with disabilities, and people of every ethnic background, religion, and heritage." When you hear this from the president, who spoke to Africa's leaders at the AU summit, even that speaking, being present there, actually says something. What are your thoughts on the issues that he has highlighted as central to his possible policy?
It's a pretty loaded statement. And listening to him, you can't help but have the feeling that you are listening to someone who wants, a clean break from what had gone on in the past 4 years under his predecessor, Donald Trump. You also have the impression that you are listening to a man who clearly knows what he wants, and that which he wants from his statement has a global connotation in terms of the strong realization that a peaceful world outside the United States of America is in United States of America's best interest. So he wants to see an Africa that not just survives, but an Africa that thrives, because based on what he has said, a thriving Africa is good for the world, but also good especially for United States of America. But then, of course, that is Joe Biden speaking for America, for the world. The African leaders that he is addressing have got to fashion out for themselves what is in their best interest, what is Africa's continental interests, and then reciprocate, because Joe Biden is not going to do that for them. Joe Biden remains the president of the United States of America, even though he's a globalist, someone that thinks in the global interest. So there is some work cut out for the African leaders in that loaded statement.
Collins, I really want to take you up on this one. What did you personally make, of his first day in office, barely less than 24 hours? He just got sworn in, and the first thing he does is sign off, reverse that travel ban from Donald Trump, especially for the African countries. What did you make of that?
Yes, two things I made of that. It's number one, a clean break from the injustices that Donald Trump used his presidency to met on the world. That's one, very, very significant. But also the fact that it was one of the 13 executive orders he signed barely 2 hours, as a matter of fact, after being sworn in as a president. I mean, these are no coincidences. These are, deliberate actions taken because of, the significance. And it also sends a very strong, signal to Africa that it is not a forgotten continent. Oh. It is a continent of the future with lots of opportunity, lots of, prospects for the rest of the world. But like I said earlier, Africa has got to reciprocate, see what they possess, the potential that they mean for the rest of the world, but more especially for Africans, and then, grab the bull by the horns.
Mm. So let's talk about the year that was and some of the things that happened. So last year on the continent, electoral outcomes for many did not reflect African democratic aspirations. Such was the case in Guinea, Tanzania, and Burundi. Moreover, the 2020 Mo Ibrahim Index on African Governance found that the public perception of overall governance is at its lowest in over a decade, and the pace of deterioration has actually doubled over the last 5 years. In reality, democracy on the continent is a work in progress, as it is everywhere. What do we expect in terms of Biden's agenda regarding democracy on the continent? And this is said in light of the fact that the Trump administration, through the Secretary of State, would make comments about, we support democracy, if there are bad elections, we will take a heavy hand. But there are some who have studied Trump's characteristics and said that his characteristics actually lent himself to strengthening Africa's strong men and autocrats rather than just the statements by his administration. So what do we expect to see in regards to that when it comes to the Biden administration?
One thing that marks Biden clearly out is the fact that unlike Donald Trump, he is not a very transactional president, which was basically what Donald Trump was. Now, Donald Trump is ready, and we saw that play out over the last 4 years, to trample on the human rights of others as long as it benefits United States of America. But his definition of the benefits for United States of America is unfortunately so narrow that he does not understand that peace in other parts of the world would actually mean that some of the problems that America faces will actually be played down. Take, for example, issues of migration, illegal migration, to be more specific. He just wants to close up the border. But you see, the fact of the matter is that as long as you find a way as legal visitors to America to get into America, illegal people will always find their own ways as well. So no matter how high the wall is, they will always find a way to, circumvent it. Now, for Biden, he has made it clear that he wants to strengthen democratic institutions, and those are his words. Strengthening democratic institutions is one of those words that are pretty well loaded. But what essentially he's telling us is, for example, and I hope African leaders are listening, and civil society as well, because they have their own rules cut out for them. What Biden is telling them with that statement is that if you want to cross over from manual voting that encourages rigging and all of that to electronic voting that means results are released on time, votes matter, votes are counted, that you can count on the United States of America to provide the capacity and perhaps even the investment to be able to achieve that, because that is one of the ways of building the democratic institution that will then reduce the sort of conflicts that you talked about emanating from elections. So yes, there are a lot to unpack, but much of the work will depend on how the African leaders react.
Yeah, Collins, I really have to take you up on this one, because many on the continent, and perhaps maybe in some of the parts of the world, will argue that perhaps the U.S., after what we just saw in the Trump administration and the fallout of the final days of the Trump presidency, that Africa should not be looking at the U.S. as a big brother anymore. Africa should just move on, perhaps look east.
Yeah. Well, an independent Africa that seeks solutions to its own problem based on the specific African idiosyncrasy is desirable.
Okay.
But you see, it is not a feat to be achieved from day one, crossing over to day two. Now, one would say that, if you look at the archives, there might be, policy analysts 50 years ago saying exactly the same thing that I'm saying. So which means that Africa has had, time to, get things done differently. Now, that somebody wants to facilitate your accelerated development doesn't necessarily mean that the person is defining the way, because the person will define the way if you allow the person. It's just like, when you say someone cannot ride you except you bend over and the person, gets on your back. Okay, so Africa, just like the rest of the world, no world, no country, no continent is an island. There is this interdependency. So Africa depends on the rest of the world, in this instance, United States of America, just like United States of America depends on Africa on quite a lot of things that they do not have. So it's got to be a relationship of mutual benefits. But then it has to be mutual benefit based on partnership. If the words he said, Biden, anything to go by, he said is a shared responsibility that they are looking to having. And so if it is shared, then Africa retains its independence while doing the things that need to be done.
Right.
So the president also said diplomacy is back, America is back. And the Biden-Harris agenda for diaspora that was released sometime late last year has a few interesting things omitted. It did not overpromise. It talks about immigration, it talks about a bit of the economy, but there is no reference to an increase in U.S. federal spending on African aid and development, nor are there commitments to deeper U.S. involvement in Africa's security challenges, even though there are more than 6,000 U.S. military men and women in some kind of rotational deployment across the continent. So these are very key areas for the continent. What do you think of this? Is this a deliberate, intentional omission, or it's because they're still trying to work out how they want to address those issues?
I believe that the speech that Joe Biden gave was a strategic speech. Two things that we should put in the fore when we try to, analyze the speech. Number one is that he made it abundantly clear that it is not going to be easy. And those are his words. But at the same time, I think it was strategically deliberate to actually avoid some of those issues that are contentious, issues that could, point to possible conflicts, because not because he wouldn't want to confront them, but he wants to confront them at the right time. And the essence of the speech is to set the right tone. And so he didn't want to poison the environment. He wants to create the right impetus. And that was why I believe those areas of contention were avoided. You've just, pointed out some of them. There are a lot more. Take, for example, the issues of, gay marriage. In the past, it has always played out, and a host of other issues. So it is more strategic than a deliberate omission.
Okay. All right, Collins. It looks like it's going to be a tilt from the, let me use the term, American carnage of America first to now a mutual respect and collaboration, just in the space of a couple of weeks, in the change of personnel in the White House. But many might say that, perhaps the America have lost the plot with Africa, because in the last couple of years, since Africa has a new best friend in the East, in China and perhaps Russia, and the Joe Biden administration have no clue where to begin right now. So perhaps maybe that's why we have those omissions there. Would you, agree with such assertions?
To some extent, yes. And indeed, when you talk about contentious areas that Joe Biden didn't touch in his speech, China is indeed one of them, because China, as Tolu described them in one of the conversations we had, a week or two ago, she described them as the elephant in the room. Yes, that's clearly what they are. Now, the clear difference between the United States and China is the fact that United States of America will ask questions where they believe that human rights are being trampled upon, whereas China does not get involved in, domestic issues, because they have enough questions to answer themselves about, abuse of human rights and so on and so forth. So again, it's all about, national interest. But I think America has the capacity to match China up in terms of how they go further with America. And don't forget that the Nigerian youths that are coming of age now are those that are asking questions. I mean, just look at what happened at the End SARS movement. So it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it is a matter of when. Because the young Africans, the next generation of African leaders, are really standing up. And so dictatorship and acceptance of all sorts of unholy practices from powers like China is not something that will continue forever, because I believe that the young people here, out there in Nigeria are watching, and their counterparts out here in the West are also forming some very strong camaraderie with them and begin to hold their leaders to power in terms of doing what is right for Africa as well.
All right, Collins Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely have you back as we continue these conversations. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Have a great day.